Wait for it. Wait for it. And we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here in the Blasters and Blaze podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a Stabby chaos coordinator, and one chief shenanigator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to address the elephant in the room. We are airing this right around the holiday season, but we are recording this in advance because we all wanted time with our families. They apparently like seeing us and stuff. So if we don't come across quite as festive as you want, just imagine a little extra ho-ho-ho, some hot chocolate, some candy canes, throw in whatever, and we'll try to fake the funk in the meantime. We're recording this like the week of Halloween. So give us a little bit of grace when we do this episode. And thank you, Lyn, for coming on. Could you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers at home?
Sure. My name is Lyn Worthen. I'm the managing editor at Camden Park Press.
Okay, and we're going to have you on specifically to do a small press radio hour about that because I'm interested to see what kind of stuff you guys are doing. But before we get too deep in the series that brought us here, we do have to ask you the religion questions. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Farscape.
Okay. What is it about Farscape that speaks to you?
The crew of misfits trying to figure out how to not kill each other as well as survive.
Is that one you feel like aged as well? Some of these aged better than others. I haven't watched Farscape recently, so.
Some of the episodes age very well. Others are totally cheesy, which actually can age very well as on its own. So as a series, I think it holds up.
Okay. All right. And because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blaze podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
I'm going to have to go with Game of Thrones as long as you're talking about the TV version and omit the last season, which I would rewrite from the ground up or burn with a dragon.
We've mentioned it before, but it hasn't been recently. But if you get bored, there's an old podcast that used to be called the Angry Staff Officer Podcast, which for those of you who don't know, dear listeners, staff officer is a phase where an officer is moved out of command of a company level element, but they're not quite ready to command a higher battalion and such, or whatever the Navy equivalent is. So they're sort of in limbo, and they put them in staff work behind a desk, and most of them don't get to do the job they like. They just get to do paperwork for ungrateful senior staff, and so they tend to be a little bitter, so hence Angry Staff Officer. And they did a breakdown of everything wrong with both the tactics and the logistics of the last season of Game of Thrones, and how they would have already lost because they didn't feed their army properly based on what we saw.
Yeah. There was so much wrong. There was so much wrong with that last season. It's just, it could be an entire discussion all by itself.
Absolutely. It's an interesting one. I like looking at some of those where they break down the tactics. They've done some for like Helm's Reach for Lord of the Rings. They've done some of the other ones like Rogue One for Star Wars. Oh, cool. It's always fun to start thinking about like taking it seriously as a concept and then figuring out how realistically you would do some of that stuff, which I enjoy. On the one hand, you don't want to take the stuff that you enjoy too seriously, but it's sometimes fun to pretend it's real. It's a weird dividing line, I know. So if we're outside of having to pretend that the last season of Game of Thrones didn't happen, what is your normal go-to for fantasy then? Do you like grimdark?
I'm not particularly fond of grimdark. I like more exploratory, urban fantasy when it's not just all about everything after trying to kill us, but also some of the trying to figure out how to survive and get along. I like, I'm a fan of Jim Butcher. I love his work. I love urban fantasy. We've got a couple of urban fantasy anthologies, and we'll probably be doing another one this coming year. So that's part of my favorite when it comes to fantasy.
I have recently discovered some of that just because of I was a creature of habit reading wise until I started doing the podcast. And now we're several years in because our first, let's see, this is the end of season 5. So 5 years of this podcast and 3 years the one before it. So 8 years of podcasting, you kind of start diving deep into genres that you might have ignored otherwise.
Uh-huh.
And you start thinking about like some of the tropes, like vampires can't see themselves in the mirror. Well, why can't they? Because mirrors were silverbacked. Well, does that mean they can see themselves now that mirrors are not backed by silver? And then you start looking at some of the other technology that exists and how they get around it, like photographs to prove that they're around. And there's a whole website where if you enter your picture, they'll find a picture from ancient or from old archives of photographs that's old and it looks like you, like from Civil War daguerreotypes and that sort of thing. And so I like the idea where you start taking it, you like, again, you pretend it's for real, and then you start figuring out how you get around the issues of modernity. Like, how do you, if you're functionally immortal, how do you pass your stuff on to yourself when everything's tracked by the internet and government databases? And like, it starts to get fun when you have to think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it would be a real challenge.
And then, of course, explaining where all the wealth comes from, because you made one good investment in like 1820.
Generational wealth. Leave it to yourself in a will.
but watching the creators come up with reasons to justify the things is part of the fun.
Yeah.
Without just the trope of secret government conspiracies and magic for reasons. Like, I mean, it explains things away. I'm not taking that away from them, but it's not as fun as some of the other more creative solutions that people come up with. So like you, I like to see them, think outside the box. So, okay. And so one of the crying shames of adulthood is we do stop asking ourselves the important questions. So we are trying to bring that back thanks to the generosity of our sponsors. And I'm going to ask you, madam, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Stegosaurus.
Excellent answer. What is it, because of a certain show, or is there something about it you like?
No, they were just all sharp and pointy and kind of fun.
They're the Stegosaurus and the Triceratops are some of the favorites.
Yeah.
For people that don't go straight for T-Rex.
Everybody goes for T-Rex or Velociraptors because they had movies. But the little guys, they're pretty cool too.
Yeah, and then the depending on age, sometimes it's Land Before Time, Jurassic Park, or what was the one? Forgotten World, I think it was. There's one where they climb into a mountain, and on the other side of the mountain is this hidden valley where there's all kinds of
yeah.
I'm drawing a blank of what that one was.
Is that Land That Time Forgot?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that was
good. That, depending on where you experience dinosaurs on the screen for the first time, you can generally tell by what their favorites are. Just by what they say. Now, is that something you got, because you mentioned, and it'll come up in a little bit, but you have sons, or at least a son, and boys tend to love that stuff. Most boys that I know went through a phase where they were obsessed with dinosaurs. So is that something you got to dive in deeper with him, or did that skip him in this instance?
Them. I had 3 sons.
Nice.
And they were into dinosaurs, but they were also into airplanes and rockets and whatever seemed like a fun other world to be playing in at the time.
And then, of course, because you are in Utah, you had the Utah Raptor and the Velociraptor. So you got to kind of say both, just because I think you're required when you live there.
Well, yeah, but as parents, we took the Velociraptor model. We, raptor parenting, one face on and one coming from the side to, support. It worked. We called it raptor parenting. It worked.
I guess that's better than helicopter parenting.
Much better than helicopter parenting.
It sounds cooler, if nothing else. Unless the helicopter's like, a gunship with cool weapons, then we can discuss it.
Yeah, then you're starting to get into cool there.
Okay. And so we try to be civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blaze podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
Usually coffee at home with a little bit of sugar and half. If I'm out, I'll get a vanilla latte, half sweet. But, there are times when coffee is just a little too much, and so then it's tea. And for that, either Earl Grey with lemon or African nectar.
When you make your tea, do you drink it with pinky up and say Earl Grey hot in your best British accent?
I do not.
Oh,
I
missed
drink it.
opportunities.
I drink it in a mug with both hands wrapped around it to keep my hands warm.
It works, but you're missing your Star Trek opportunities there.
Well,
You have time.
No. Jean-Luc is wonderful, but I don't have to drink tea that. So.
Okay. So for me, do you drink anything special during the holidays for hot beverages?
I'll make up a big, huge vat of eggnog that won't last out the day, but and we'll often make cider, but that's pretty much it.
Okay, for me, for the holiday, I do love me a nice peppermint mocha. During the holiday, I don't love the calories, so I limit myself. But at least the peppermint mocha, surprisingly, is a lot better calorically than the pumpkin spice I drink. I give myself one in October season because as much as I love them, I don't love the calories. But I can get away with a few more peppermint mochas because they're not quite as bad.
And see, for me, if you put it on peppermint bark, then there we go. And the pumpkin goes into the pie and not into my coffee.
Pumpkin pie, you can't go wrong with that. So do you have a favorite holiday food that you guys do as a family?
You mean besides the turkey and stuffing and
right,
gravy and mashed potatoes, all of that?
Like, do you have a favorite dessert? I suppose I'll be more specific.
No, we'll do the pumpkin pie. I'll do the sticky toffee pudding. We'll do, just a few different things.
I don't think I've heard of sticky toffee pudding.
It's one that I learned about in the East Coast. It's like little tiny cakes, which you would recognize from Fillory. Little tiny cakes. They're made from dates and they're extremely sweet, and you pour a hot caramel sauce over them. And they're very, very rich and delicious. Sticky toffee pudding, highly recommended.
Okay.
I was on a business trip in New York and that was a dessert that was offered. And I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. And I'd never had it. So I had it. And then every other time we were out for dinner, if the restaurant had it, that was what I was getting. And then I came home and it's like, I have to have this recipe. And so I found a few different ones and figured out which combination worked, because there's a few different recipes, but they're all essentially very similar. And it's a family favorite.
So I'm a sucker for some apple pie with vanilla ice cream or pecan pie. Although Jana sent fudge last year and it was delicious, so I can't complain.
Jana is the goddess of fudge.
And the year before that, she sent fudge, and I didn't get much of it because my mom and my stepdad liberated all of it. And so she sent some for them too, which I really, really appreciated, which meant I got a little bit of it this last year. So I take that as a win. But yeah, so that's it. We do the standard ham, turkey, the fixins as far as food goes for the meal. But it's dessert. It's where it's at for the holidays. And I have it on good authority on holidays. The calories don't count.
That's what I've heard.
I mean, it's not science or anything, but it sounds about right.
It works.
Okay. All right. So obviously, you've mentioned Camden Park Press, which is your imprint that you run, the small press. Yes. As a managing editor, and you organized all the anthologies. But before you were running a publishing company, before you were writing your own thrillers that had glorious covers that you showed me in the pre-show, you had to have been a reader at some point, I would assume. Nobody wakes up and says, I've never read a book, but I want to write one. So how did you get into all things literary?
I come from a large family, and when my older brothers were young, the school system was teaching sight reading, which meant that my brothers learned how to read but not how to spell. And in attempting to remedy that situation, my mother picked up what was the equivalent at the time of like Hooked on Phonics. And I was just, little kid, barely more than a toddler, sitting over playing with my toys while my mom was going through the flashcards and all of that stuff with my older brothers. And the next thing she knew, they were still struggling a little bit with some of the concepts, and I'm sounding out cereal boxes and soup can labels, and picking up their books to read. Um, and so for me, I've been reading since before I can remember, and reading anything I could get my hands on. We were a military family, so we traveled to different places, and I would read my way through the elementary school libraries, just work my way around through all of the books. And if I'd already read it in some other library and there was a book next to it that I hadn't read, I would pick up the new one. um, Read my way through elementary school libraries, middle school libraries, high school libraries, to the point where I would pick up a book, take it home, read it, and I read very fast. Um, and then return it the next day, and the librarian didn't believe I was reading them, and so she would open up a book and randomly quiz me on whatever, and I would answer the question. And when I took home something, I don't even remember what book it was, but it was, War and Peace thick kind of book. And I took it home on a Friday of a long weekend, brought it back 3 days later, and she opened to 3 different places. I answered whatever her random questions were, and she never quizzed me again. She just started recommending books to me. And, that was, in ninth grade. I just never stopped reading, and I don't intend to ever stop reading. I saw a meme recently where it had RIP was reading in peace, and down below they had the ghost reading the books that it hadn't had a chance to read in life. And that's probably going to be me.
I have found, you can't, the old joke, you can't ask the genie for immortality. So one of the jokes is you don't want to die until everyone in Congress is honest, or the other one, which means you're functionally immortal, or the other one is until you read every book on your TBR list. And in both cases, I'm going to live forever, because every time I turn around, you add more books and more books and more books. And so I'm with you. Like that's the one thing that you regret about dying. Not so much because life is special because it's finite, but all the books I'll never get to finish reading is just kind of sad.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing that's the existential angst that'll keep me up at night.
Books I won't get to finish reading, books I won't get to write, books, stories that need to be told, places I need to visit, people I need to meet.
Absolutely. So when did you decide you wanted to transition from reading all of the books to I want to tell my own stories?
When I couldn't find the kinds of stories I was looking for. There was and it still happens. I mean, you had in the pre-show you were asking, or maybe it was earlier in the live show, you were asking about grimdark, which I'm not a fan of. There was a time when it seemed like everything was going grimdark. All of the science fiction was dystopian, and everything is out to destroy us. All of the fantasy was all of the fae in any of their various incarnations and worlds were trying to kill us, eat us, or enslave us. Everything was just bad and dark. And I'm like, I don't hold to the, I mean, yeah, there's problems in the world, but I don't think everything is going to be just bleak and dark and with not even a spark of life or hope. And so I decided that, out of spite, I wanted to read things that were lighter, and if I couldn't find them, I would have to write them. And so I started writing. I wrote a space opera heist novel that is lighter. I wrote, other kind of fantasy that has, I mean, I wrote a silly fantasy that, in response to where urban fantasy at the time was extremely dark, I wrote something I called suburban fantasy, which is lighter and less edgy than its urban cousins, and was about a troll that had moved in, lived under the bridge in Philadelphia, got talked into buying a fixer-upper house in the suburbs, and he was just trying to fit in, and he drove a taxi, and you know all that kind of stuff. And it's like, and my agent was very confused, and she's like, I don't even know what to do with this. But so when I couldn't find what I wanted to read, I said, well, I guess I'm going to have to write it.
So have you continued writing more suburban fantasy?
Yes, nowadays they call it cozy fantasy, but it's the same. It's the same type of feeling. Mostly in that particular genre, I do short fiction, not so much in the novels. I still have. You were saying you're never going to die as long as your TBR list is not finished. Well, I took an inventory of all of the projects in my to write queue, and I will also live forever. So there are more of those books in that list of books that are just sitting there tapping their fingers, waiting, characters tapping their fingers, waiting to their turn to be the target point of view characters on the screen.
So, would you consider cozy fantasy and slice of life fantasy to be the same thing?
Not at all. Not at all. Slice of life is more what I would say is contemporary fantasy. It's a little bit more on the realistic side. So you've got urban fantasy, which is heavy into the magic side. You've got slice of life, which is more of the contemporary fantasy, where you've got people living what appear to be normal lives with magic involved. And then the the fantasy characters usually end up taking center stage. They're generally going to be out in the open. They're generally not going to be hiding who or what they are in the world that they're living, and they're living in a variation of the real world. So it's kind of like going across a spectrum from the darker to the more serious to the attempting to be real, to the we're not even pretending to be real, we're just playing and having fun. And it's like in the mystery world, you go from thrillers, you go all the way over to cozy, where people still might die in a cozy mystery, but we're talking about having tea and cupcakes, or going talk in the knitting circle, trying to figure out how to figure out who done it. The focus is very different. And in cozy fantasy it's the same. The focus is very, very different. It's more on the lighthearted side.
Okay, that sounds like a discussion we might have to dive in deeper with a standalone episode. Because in the what they're now calling men's adventure fiction or men's romance genres, you see slice of life, and it is seems to me a lot more like what I see called cozy fantasy, but they're calling it slice of life because there's no large stakes. Um,
Mhm.
they're more along the lines of legends and lattes kind of vibe, if you're familiar with that one.
Okay, a little bit.
And
um
so I don't know. The problem is there's no hard and fast rule, so it's like however someone
right,
feels like, and it gets
right.
fun when you start talking about what each book is.
Yeah, well, I mean, the slice of life, if you think of the old Bewitched and I Dream of Jeannie TV shows, those were slice of life fantasy, because you had a witch or a genie who were living in suburban world, as normal people, but they weren't normal people at all. But the stakes were very, very low. And it's am I going to be discovered? It was pretty much the top of the stakes ladder. And um, I can't right now. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and then you look at some of the things that are going on in cozy fantasies are often cozy mysteries with fantasy characters. They're not always mysteries, but they often are. Just as urban fantasy is often has a mystery undertone, or a higher stakes element to it. It's not just the magic. There's often also the stakes involved. So the when you go across the range, your slice of life, it's just like anything else. This is just an ordinary day in the neighborhood, and somebody happens to have magic. They're keeping their lawn greener because they have magic, or they're getting their dishwasher to run even though there's no power on. So
I could see that being a fun Civil War story, the great New Balance wars with the dads that have to do it the old fashioned way against those cheating, pesky magic users who have the greener lawns. And
it
so
could be.
they had to die. Just they had it coming. They cheated. Okay.
I was working for a press clipping service many years ago during a time when there was a drought going on up in Seattle, and one of the things I was hearing on the radio that I was working with, people were painting their lawns green in order to still have a green lawn but not use the water.
Wait,
So
doesn't it rain all the time in Seattle?
not during a drought, and yes, they do have them. And this was a long, long time ago.
I just keep thinking about when we were talking about how it's hard to define terms when you're talking about genres and subgenres and niches in literature, and those poor marketing people. Because like if I'm selling a hammer is a hammer is a hammer. Mine might be a little bit better made, might be better, materials or a more ergonomic or whatever, but it's still a hammer at the end of the day.
Right.
A book, on the other hand, it's so much more
Oh, a
complex
book can be
when,
anything.
when you're trying to sell it to somebody. It's like, oh, those poor marketing people. Which has your own small press. That's also you.
Yes. Yes.
So before we start talking about the series that brought us here, we talked about it a little bit in the pre-show, and you mentioned, growing up as a military brat, moving around. So you have the unique distinction of having been a military brat, military dependent in the form of a wife and as a child, and then having a kid in the military. So do you think your time in being around the military to that degree affects the way you tell stories and you world build?
It definitely affects how I world build because I've seen parts of the world that I might not otherwise have. Um, and and had to interact with people, had to learn how to hit the ground running to either make friends or figure out what are the rules of this new city, this new state, this new town. Um, what The climate is different. We moved from Las Vegas to Anchorage, Alaska. From Anchorage, we moved to Dayton, Ohio. All three of those have extremely different climate things that we had to learn about. Not to mention the local culture was different in each of those places. Um, and and then I've also traveled out of the country. I've seen, and because of being part of a military community, you also interact with people who are coming into the community from different places, whether it's different parts of the United States or different countries, or who having traveled to different countries, and so you get different perspectives on the world than from people who have always lived in one place, one town, their whole family and their family's family and their extended family has always lived in one area. And I know this because my dad's family was that way. They had always lived in the Ohio, Indiana, Kentucky region, and and most of them still to this day live in that region. And they have, kind of, it's like, well, this is the way the world is. And for me, where I've been in so many different places, both in the country and out of it, it's like actually the world is a lot of different ways. And it definitely makes a difference in how when I create when I write stories, I might set them any place on the planet or off planet or in another world that I've made up entirely on my own. Because it lets me experiment with some of those differences. And sometimes it's like I write about the people, and sometimes the things are also people.
So because you've met so many people from all over the world, do you
Mhm.
draw on those when you're creating?
Sure, who doesn't? We all draw on people and things that we there is a certain truth to when they say write what you know. Now, and the more experiences that you have, the deeper that you can draw on, the deeper the well you can draw on. Um, I'll take sometimes there will be, well, I want to write a story. I have a character who is similar to so and so, but I'm not actually writing about that person. I'm writing about that person in this aspect of their life. And then I'm taking a pinch of that person, and a pinch of that one, and a pinch of that one, and a little bit of this, and I'm throwing them all in the blender, pouring it out on the tray, stretching it like taffy, and turning it into, and then all of a sudden that taffy starts to form my own little Gumby person that I can then torture in a story. But I'll take a lot of different elements of people and ideas and thoughts and habits and manners of eating and drinking and speaking and dress, and pull them together to create a patchwork. I mean, I play Dr. Frankenstein routinely, I guess, when I'm creating characters, and the same when I'm creating worlds.
Okay. All right. Well, normally, okay. Well, I guess this is the part, dear listener, where I pause for a moment, where I shamelessly shuffle the man, and then we are going to jump into the series that the collection of short stories that brought us here. So we're going to play that beautiful commercial.
Ho, ho! Oh, hell. Is that sleigh bells ringing in your ears or a few rounds from an M60? You wanted the jolly fat man to bring Yuletide joy, but the season has gifted you with a heartbreaker and a life taker. Badass Santa. Grab your eggnog and camouflage candy canes. Strap on your bulletproof holiday stockings and prepare for thrills and kills. From blood-stained rebellion at the North Pole to a Black Ops raid on a distant planet, these 18 action-packed tales will show you Saint Nick as you have never seen him before. It's all you'll want for Christmas.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. So let me throw the covers up while we talk about this. Man, you discombobulated me talking about the taffy because then you got me thinking about sweet stuff. And somehow this podcast always becomes the food cast. We just can't escape it. And I notice it more because I've been dieting to lose weight. So,
Sorry, I take it back.
It's okay. It's glorious. Well, first off, obviously, Holiday Hijinks, which your Camden Park Press puts out, is a collection of short stories. So it's an anthology. Where did the idea for the start of this collection come from?
Desperation. No.
It's a good place to start.
It is. So, in the spirit of shameless self-promotion, I would often give out one of my books for Christmas gifts. And at some point, it was like, okay, that's probably a little bit too shameless a self-promotion thing to do. So maybe I should, grab some books grab some. I like to receive books as gifts. I like to give books as gifts. And so I decided one year that, hey, I put together anthologies all the time. I can put together a smaller anthology, 10 lighthearted stories that would turn into really good stocking stuffers. And so I did Whimsical Winter Wonderland, Crazy Christmas Capers, and Happy Holiday Historicals all that same year, and released them all through the holidays, and decided that, yeah, that had been absolutely insane, but it was also a lot of fun. And each one of those anthologies has 10 short stories in it. And, it was great fun. And then the following year, we added Mistletoe Merriment, which has a romance theme. The year after that, we added Tidbits and Tinseltales, which was pets and the holidays. Then last year, we added Haunted Holidays, which is, ghosts who aren't the scary ghosts, but are either the nostalgic ghosts or the ghosts who are trying to help us have the proper holiday. This year, we're working on our 7th anthology, which is Toy Trucks and Teddy Bears, and it's stories about toys that are part of the holidays. So, each volume has its own little theme, but the overarching principle is this is hijinks. It's lighthearted. It's fun. It's, I tell the authors, no politics, pandemics, or Nobody gets hurt in any meaningful way. Yes, you can throw snowballs at somebody and have them be startled, but nobody gets broken, right? It's having fun through the holidays. And so now I have gifts that I can give to people through the holidays. So it was a little bit, I did it a little bit for myself, but it's also been something that a lot of people have had some fun with.
I don't know that I could write a story that didn't have those elements.
You would be surprised what you can do if you put your mind to it. When I put together an anthology, I set the guidelines, and then I receive the stories. I read the stories, and as I'm winnowing them out, what I end up with, I'll have all of these stories, and oh look, here's a gap. Here's a story that hasn't been told, something that's not in that collection, and that's the story I write. Writing a story about pets isn't something that I would have done on my own, but because that was the anthology, that was the challenge that I had for myself. Writing a story about, silliness, silly hijink capers was not something I probably would have thought of doing after having written a thriller. And yet that was the gap. And so I wrote a silly Christmas caper, but you would be surprised what you can actually do if you put your mind to it and just, relax and let your inner child play.
So since you said inner child, for parents that are listening and saying, hey, this looks cute on the covers, what would you say the age range of these stories are for people that are considering whether this is age appropriate as parents? If it helps
yeah.
the movie rating scale, that's fine.
Oh yeah, the rating scale is fun. These are not children's stories. Probably middle school kids would be okay with them. Most of the books that we do from Camden Park Press are at least high school and above. But the hijinks stories probably can go down into, middle school age kids, junior high. And most of them, it's not that there's anything inappropriate in them. It's that they might not necessarily understand what's going on. Most of them, though, are pretty light and not going to be something that's going to cause anybody any grief. But they're not children's stories.
Are they? They're obviously out in ebook. Are they coming out in hardcover or are they audiobooks?
They're all in paper, as well as ebooks. And audiobook is.
Can you show us the paperback since I got
you? Here's one of the paperbacks.
Oh, they're not too big. They're stocking stuffer size.
Yeah, they're stocking stuffer size. They're not huge, and yeah. So they are all in ebooks on all the usuals, in all the usual places, in paper on Amazon, and audiobook. That's a future goal, but it's not something that we have done yet. And once I get things in place to be able to do that, then I still would have to contract with the individual authors to put the collection into audio.
Now, how many pages or word counts is each of these anthologies?
They run about 60 to 70,000 words. So let me see. I'm looking at this one right now. It is 230 pages.
That's not
yeah,
much.
It's 10 short stories. So
you get your money's worth for that.
You get your money's worth.
Are they something that you do sales on for the paperback, or I don't know if you're able to do that with Amazon? I haven't looked in a long while because I don't tend not to sell a lot of paperbacks.
Yeah, we do occasionally put something on sale. I don't too often because they're already pretty low. I already keep the price low on them.
Okay. Do you offer some small presses will offer bulk orders, but if you're doing all of it through print on demand, I don't know that that's an option. But for people that wanted to buy like the box set kind of thing, is that something that you guys do through your press, or do they just fulfill it through Amazon?
No, it's just fulfillment through Amazon. If you find us at an event, sometimes you can, different authors all of our authors are able to order author copies and sell them at events. I will have copies at an event I will be at this week. It's a charity event, and there will be people there who will probably pick up an entire set, and they will get it at a discounted price. But I mostly for the books, the paper books, I only do discounted prices at live in-person events.
I mean, what about for people that wanted signed copies? Is that an option?
Again, that's a live in-person event kind of situation.
Okay. I don't know, like if this is where your authors are all local to where you're at,
They are
or
not. No, we're all over the place. I have authors right from, I'm not sure on the hijinks specific, but across the anthologies that I've put together, I've had authors from Italy and Germany and the UK and Canada, all across the United States, down into Australia and New Zealand. I've had authors from all over the world, and stories that are set in a lot of different places. So we really try to say, tell us your stories, reach out. We are not a closed market in that fashion.
some anthologies are collections of people from writing groups that are all local to each other, in which case getting signed copies by all the authors is very doable. But it's not always the case. That's why I thought I'd ask.
Yeah. No, we're way too scattered. There's one author, she lives in the Toronto area, who has actually been in every issue or every volume of Hijinks. There is another author who is local to me here in Salt Lake City who has been in nearly every volume, but most of the authors who have been in them. Now that I have a stable, I let the existing hijinks authors know up front what the next volume will be, so that they get a little bit of a head start, but they still have to compete for the spots just like everybody else. But there are several repeat authors, but there's also several new authors in the different anthologies.
Do you have an upper limit of how many you'll accept?
For hijinks, only 10.
Okay. And how many are you getting submission wise? Is it like flooding your inbox, or?
That really varies depending on the particular topic. For tidbits and tinseltails, I think I probably had like 75.
Oh gosh.
For whimsy, I had 90. For mistletoe merriment, seems like that one was up in the 80s or 90s. For historicals, I had, only about half that number though. It's the Happy Holiday Historicals is the one that is slightly more serious than the others. And so some of the stories are a little bit longer. The stories in Mistletoe Merriment, the romances, are a little bit longer. And, so they all appeal to different audiences. The Haunted Holidays, oh my goodness, I don't even remember how many of those I got. It was a lot. But the one I'm reading, or the one I'm working on right now, Toy Trucks and Teddy Bears, I got quite a few submissions, but a lot of people missed the target, in that I didn't just want, here's a story about a child who wanted a toy. I wanted the toy and the child and the whole thing to be very, very tightly integrated. And so, they might have hit on one point and missed on two others, and so didn't quite make the cut. And so I actually extended the call and reissued it to a slightly narrower field of authors, who then, were able to give enough extra stories that then it was like, now I have to choose again between stories that I really am liking. So I ended up with more stories than I could use, which is what you want. You want it to be a hard choice. You want to be having to choose the best of the best of the best, and have more than you can use. And that's actually a good thing. If you only get exactly what you need, you might not end up with the best kind of collection. So, so every single one is different. There was another anthology that I did a few years ago that I had close to 300 submissions for. That was a lot of reading. So,
yikes.
yeah, most of the holiday stories don't top 100, but they're usually between 60 and 100.
See, I cheat. If I get too many and they're good, I just do several volumes. But yeah, that's a lot of stories. Are you still able to read as fast as you did as a kid?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because that would make it
I
very
wear glasses now. I wear glasses now because I probably have, overstrained my eyes more than I should have. But yeah, I still can read very quickly. And, as an editor, you're not reading every single word of every single story. You're reading until the story throws you out. When the story kicks you out, that's when you stop reading and you put it into your maybe not pile. The earlier the story kicks you out and says, either the writing is poor or they're completely off topic or some other element is just not working, the sooner you kick it out, the less likely you are to buy that story. And so when I sit down to read, I will read until the story tells me to stop reading. And then it will either go in my no pile or my maybe pile. And first ones that I have put into the no pile, I send the rejections, I pick up the maybe pile, and I start working my way through it again. And I go, a little bit farther then until I've narrowed it down to about twice as many stories as I need. And then I start looking at the stories in terms of how will these stories work together? Because sometimes you'll have 10 perfect stories, but they're not going to play well together in the covers of the same book. And that's a challenge too, to be able to have stories that will fit in the covers, and be a pleasant reading experience for whoever is picking up the volume. And so you're looking at not just are these good stories, but do they work? Are they, if we in our imaginations pretend that people will read the book from front to back in the order that I'm putting it together, rather than just jump around and read their favorite authors first, which we know happens. But if we pretend for a minute that they're reading from front to back, can I create a path through that book that is going to be something that is going to be, in this case, enjoyable, fun, make them laugh, make them cry, have them leave the book happy and have a good holiday?
So the vibe in the way you set the prompt is something that you stick really, really tightly to in this kind of anthology.
Yes.
So
yes.
like,
I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in it, but there are also things that are just, no, we cannot do this.
Because like when I do a sci-fi anthology and it's space dogfights, there's a lot of room for a lot of kind of stories.
Mm-hmm.
You're picking kind of like an overarching theme.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas sounds like yours is more narrowed for not just theme, but like the vibe of a story. So people are more aware of what they're getting, which I think your cover does a pretty good job of.
Yeah, well, and specifically, especially for Hijinks, because Hijinks is a brand that I want people to be able to say, I'm picking up a Hijinks volume. I am going to have fun with this. This is going to be something that I want to give as a gift, but I want to read it first. And somebody actually bought a copy from me the other day and said that very thing. I'm going to give this as a gift, but I want to read it first because I know it's going to be fun. So I'm like, cool. But I want people to be able to see the Hijinks brand, to see that ribbon, to see my little penguin. I don't know if you can see him, to see my little penguin logo and know that this is going to be a fun holiday read. Yep, there's our little penguin. I call him my helpful editor penguin. And periodically he will post things on our social media that are penguin approved.
So now that you've been doing this for, I mean, is this one a year that you do, or do you do more than one a year?
No, we do. Of the Hijinks, we do one a year.
So you've been doing this for 6 years, since what, 2020?
1, 2, 3. Well, I did the first 3. I did the same year. So I did Whimsy, Historicals, and Capers in the same year, and then so that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So right now we're in our 5th year. So yeah, that would have been 2020. Yeah.
Have any of the stories based on like with your very targeted themes, have any of the stories surprised you?
Oh yeah, yeah, all the time. I never really know what I'm going to get. I mean, it's Christmas morning when I open these stories. I never have any real idea of what I'm going to get. Um, is it going to be, is it going to be a story about a haunted Hanukkah, which is like a menorah? Which I didn't expect. Is it going to be a story about somebody who has gone back in time to visit a memory from a past life or a past time period like we had in historicals? Is it going to be, a couple of elves trying to figure out how to, get the toys to the right kid? Is it going to be a dog trying to, find its way home to an owner where it had perhaps gotten lost during the holiday or prior to the holiday, or a toy that got lost trying to find its boy or find its girl, or there's a couple that there's one that's going to be in the new volume of a toy that its girl had grown up, and now you know there it was found, and the toy was brought out, and there's a possibility of it finding a new child that will love it. And I'm not going to spoil the story by telling you what the situation is, but there are stories that I read and I'm just like, this is so sweet, and I know I'm buying it. I don't even have to go through multiple rounds to read. There are stories that get the automatic yes, and there are stories that I have to go through and sift and sort and figure out how to balance them.
I like that you have the bow on the bottom that lines up on all of the covers.
I had fun putting those together.
And then at the top, you've got the little, almost like the gift where the let me zoom in so people can see it, but it almost like where you'd put where it says Holiday Hijinks Anthology, where you'd put on a wrapping, because these all look like they're wrapped. Then you're peeling it open to see what's inside, and then the little scroll where you'd put the ribbon where you tell who the gift is to, where it says the branding. I really like how you did the brand recognition on these.
Thank you.
And I would have never thought of the wrapping paper being peeled open, but it really works in hindsight.
I had fun. I had trying to come up with something that would be a consistent template that I could use across the series so that it would tie them together. I chose the pastels, choosing finding the ribbon and the banner and all that, and putting that together. That was all an important part of it. And then what that does is it gives me the freedom to play and say, okay, so now what is going to be the image that will actually convey what kinds of stories are in each book, and I have a lot of fun with that.
So where do the ideas that become your themes come from? Like, how do you generate those?
Oh my goodness. They can come from anywhere, honestly. Someone said that ideas are everywhere. Writers are the ones who pick them up. And, the idea of writing a story about pets in Tinseltails, pets in the at Christmas. Many years ago, I had a cat that happened to have had kittens shortly before Christmas. As we were getting ready to decorate the tree, I found one morning, I came out in the middle of the night and found kittens climbing in the Christmas tree, knocking the ornaments off. That's just, when I thought about Tinseltails, I thought of my Christmas tree kittens, and just went from there. The ideas of, mistletoe merriment, Christmas and holiday and romance, it just goes together. So for every single one, it's just, playing with ideas, what seems like a fun idea for the holidays. Right now, toy trucks and teddy bears. I have two little grandsons, and they like toy cars and they like toys. They're all into toys, and so the idea of coming up with stories that are about toys, just sort of was organic. So I just play with ideas until I see which one seems to stick.
So obviously the open call for 2025 is out. Have you picked your topic for 2026 yet?
I have, and it has not yet been announced and won't be announced probably until about March.
Okay.
So no, I am not giving spoilers.
No, absolutely. So that's the one thing people don't realize when you buy a Christmas themed book and you're like, oh, somebody wrote this around the holidays. No, they probably sweated in the summer when they were trying to get into the festive Christmas spirit to write their Christmas story while, prepping for the 4th of July or something. Because that's what I had to do with my story for my own anthology, right? Like you tend to backwards plan, which means generally speaking, you're writing them in the summer.
Yeah, I'm usually opening a call for hijinks in the early spring. I usually have them due sometime in like July or August,
Right.
usually July, Christmas in July. Give me your stories. And hopefully you've written them before that so that I have time to go through the selection process and the editing and there's quite a few different steps that go into the process of building an anthology. And that all takes time. I used to work at a magazine, and we were always working about 6 months out, and that is not really any different, especially with something like these that have a particular time period when they're supposed to be coming out.
Yeah, just
for other anthologies, if they don't have a specific target season or holiday or something that they're associated with, and they can just come out whenever. They'll come out approximately 6 months from when I start getting the stories. But for something like this, I have to have it to a fairly tight time frame.
And that's one of the things I don't think always, from the reader side, we always appreciate that. Yeah, this is the perfect little Christmas story you're reading, whatever it happens to be. And then knowing they definitely didn't write it at Christmas because, there's the lag time from when you write it to edit to produce it, unless, of course, you write it at Christmas and then you publish it the year later. Generally speaking, you're writing it, right, and you're generally writing it in the off season and having to do little things to get yourself in the mood, like put your favorite Christmas tune on or your favorite holiday drink, whatever it is, something you could replicate the mood to sort of set the ambiance while you write these. And it's funny when you think about the little rituals you have to do to trick yourself into thinking in the holiday spirit. Now, obviously you can't speak for all of your authors, but is that something you did on your end when you were writing your own story?
A little bit, but realize too, by the time I choose everybody else's stories before I write my own because I don't know what gap I'm going to be filling. And so by the time I get to where I'm writing mine, I'm already pretty well steeped in the story, in that holiday thing by having read all of theirs.
Well, that's true.
And so that helps me a lot in getting into that frame of mind. If I were writing for an open call for somewhere else, then yes, I'd have to do all the same kinds of things you're talking about, things that will help me get into that mindset.
So is there, do you do a cover reveal or do you see it when the book goes live as far as the readers?
The readers usually just see it when the book goes live. I've done cover reveals before, and sometimes it depends on what kind of traction both my own socials and the authors that I'm providing materials to. It just sort of depends on what audiences they have. I haven't really found that cover reveals resonate that well or that widely. Sometimes they work really well. A cover reveal we did for a horror anthology worked very, very well. Cover reveals we've done for others haven't gotten the same kind of attention. And these, the cover itself is a reveal. So I haven't done a separate cover reveal for them.
Okay. When do these, because obviously we're pre-recording it, when will the newest one, the 7th book in this collection, go on sale?
The 7th book, which will be Toy Trucks and Teddy Bears, is scheduled for release during the Black Friday, Cyber Monday time period.
For the last week of November, dear listener.
At the very end of November.
So when you're listening to this, it will already be out in the wild, and you can go check it out. And we will link to the anthology series page. So, you can buy one, you can buy all. She won't hate you if you do, I promise you.
Oh, no. You'll have fun. And you'll have a whole handful of stocking stuffers and fun for everybody.
So if is there anything that we didn't cover on the collection of Holiday Hijinks before we wrap this up that you think listeners and readers need to know?
Well, everybody needs a penguin.
What made you pick a penguin, since we're talking about penguin?
It's a little bit of a sad story, actually. A few of us authors, there's a whole bunch, sort of a little, like you did Star Wars or Star Trek kind of thing. Well, for authors, a lot of times it's dog or cat. What is your writing pet? And I had a cat that was my helpful editor cat. And when he passed away was right when I was starting to put together the Holiday Hijinks books. And so I needed to replace my helpful editor cat with another helpful editor friend. And when I was somewhere in the process of looking for the art that I wanted to use for the series, I ran across the image of the penguin. And I'm like, I like that. That cute little penguin, he will be my helpful editor penguin. And it just was something that made me feel better. And then we gave him the banner, and we just started using him as our little mascot on the Hijinks website, and he became helpful editor penguin. And periodically, especially during times when we're talking about hijinks things on the Camden Park website, there will be a post that will usually have some form of penguin in it. It'll say it's penguin approved or something like that. He's my helpful editor penguin. So it's a silly thing, but it started, the penguin just sort of waddled into my life at a time when I needed an editing or an editing companion or writing companion to replace a cherished pet.
Okay. Is that something other people put into their own little marketing stuff too, or is that just a you thing?
Some people do. That's just because the penguin was fun. I chose to continue using the penguin as part of the branding. But some people will do that. Other people won't. It's that's a personal thing. Whatever seems to float your boat. That one just was fun for me.
Anymore, I see holiday animals and you think polar bear because Coke did such a good job on marketing.
Yeah, but Coke did such a good job on marketing that, there's a bear on that one image, but the penguin is who's taking for center stage. So.
Yeah, fair. Okay, so this is the part of the interview, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right books, so it really does matter. So do your part. We would greatly appreciate it. And with that, how might listeners and viewers at home find you on the Wild Waddle interwebs and your Camden Press as well?
Well, CamdenParkPress.com is our website, and we have links there to all of our many projects, active projects in progress, books by the different authors that we publish. So that's always a good site. Camden Park Press is on Facebook. We're on Instagram, although not as often as I probably should be. We have a Substack newsletter that, again, I get swamped sometimes, and so I don't post to as often. So I call it an occasional newsletter. And so you will occasionally get something from us. But it's better than being bombarded, right? Or you can find me on socials. I'm on Facebook under my own name as Lyn Worthen. And, I look forward to hearing from people. And people are always welcome to visit us on the web or, on our socials and ask questions or look at what projects we have and tell us what they're interested in.
All right. And you can find us, dear listener, on our link tree, linktr.ee, linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things: the BitChute, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikTok, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord, our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We've got our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com for professional purposes only, people. Save the shenanigans from Stabby over there on the Instagram, Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink those coffee brand coffee products until they float away on a river of liquid awesome, and you can have some of that awesomeness if you go to the coffee brand coffee link in the show notes. Use the code PODCASTGRUNTS. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win, people. And with that, I would like to thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy and absentee co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thank you for coming on, Lyn. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
And we're definitely going to have you come back to talk about your press and your other personal writings that you do as you, not as you, the editor of a press.
That would be fun.
All right. And with that, we're going to hit the end button, dear listener. So with that, don't cuss yet. Wait.